Hello and welcome to CMB Connect, the podcast that takes you behind the designation. I'm your host, Val Buresh. In this episode, we have a fascinating international story. We are rewinding to 2005 when 3 seasoned CMBs took on an unusual challenge, helping to establish a modern mortgage system in Egypt. To get the inside story, I sat down with SuSheila Dhillon, Alan Fowler, and Brian Handel. They share their memories and insights, and I can't wait for you to hear them. Let's jump in. They are colleagues and friends, SuSheila Dhillon, Alan Fowler, and Brian Handel. Welcome.
Thank you. Brian's my little brother sitting on a short chair next to me.
That makes it even so more authentic.
And we have those stories too. Don't watch out.
Oh, yes. So I want to transport the listeners and all of us back in time. It is 2005 and our industry, the US mortgage industry, is humming along, and the idea of going to Egypt is not on anyone's mind at that time. So I just want for each one of you to paint a picture. Where were you in 2005, and what city, what role, what were you doing, what were you thinking? Alan, let's start with you.
All right. Well, first, Val, thanks for having us. This is something, if you're in a room together with the three of us, we love to talk about, and everyone knows that. So the opportunity to go back and reminisce about this is fantastic for us. So we appreciate the opportunity to do it. But in 2005, I was running my family's full-service mortgage company in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and my extracurricular activity was teaching the School of Mortgage Banking. So at that point, I'd been a CMB for about 10 years, and I was doing a lot of teaching with the schools around the country. So that was the thing that kept me sane during that period, and we were doing a lot of refinances in 2005. So that's where we were when the call came to me.
Wow, so you were in Albuquerque doing the family business, doing a lot of refinancing, and that felt a world away from Cairo. Wow.
Yeah. Well, when I got the phone call, Jonathan Kempner from MBA called, who was the head of MBA at the time, and he and I had met a few times, but certainly we weren't buddies, and so I wasn't expecting a phone call from him. And he said, "Would you do a special school for us?" And I said, "Sure." And he said, "In Cairo." And I said, "The one in Egypt or Illinois?" And he said, "No, the one in Egypt." So,
oh, that's a great story. SuSheila, how about you? While Alan was in Albuquerque, where were you in your career? What was on your mind? And what was actually your initial gut reaction when this Egypt opportunity came across your desk?
Thank you, Val, for asking that, because it doesn't get asked that much. It's always, what did you do? How did you find it? But I was very excited. Jennifer Ridings reached out to me. And as a matter of fact, I had a consulting company, and Brian and I were working in DC for a company that was under receivership. And we got them out of the sanctions, which was good. But I was asked to go to Egypt and work on that. In the mid 80s, my dad had gone on the largest abroad mission for USAID to work in Egypt on their public water systems and getting that infrastructure created. And then a couple years later, my brother, on behalf of Westinghouse, which now is Northrop Grumman, is an engineer, and he was asked to help stand up their mission systems in a peace accord deal that we had created between Egypt and Israel. So when they said, "Do you want to go to Egypt?" the first two calls I made were to my dad and my brother, and they were so excited and happy, and I was really looking forward to it.
That's a great story, SuSheila. You were working in the American market, but you had that connection to Egypt already.
Exactly.
Yeah. And Brian, complete the picture for us. What's your 2005 story?
Well, it's not nearly as exciting. I was running a mortgage company for a bank in San Diego, and that bank was Silvergate. Of course, I lived in Virginia. We had offices in Richmond and San Diego. So, and like Alan, I was also teaching a lot at the School of Mortgage Banking in that time. And yes, we were extremely busy in 2005 with refinances.
Yep. And Brian and I knew each other a little bit from the school. One would be coming into town, one would be going out of town. So we'd had a few beers together, but that was about the extent of our relationship. And I didn't know SuSheila.
Neither did
If
I.
he had, if
Yes.
he had, he may have said, no, I don't want to do this.
If
But
it,
it's funny because I didn't know Alan at all till the day we showed up at MBA. And Brian and I shared a best friend, Stephen Valadares, but we were not friends by any stretch of the imagination. But very
Look how
rapidly.
happy she is.
yeah, this was
She's changed you.
an amazing
The goal of every good.
project that brought you all together.
We did. And look,
Yeah.
20 years later, and we're, as you know, we're best of friends. We're traveling together. I changed my background, but we're in the same location together, just in different rooms. And we do a lot of our socializing with the three of us together and our families.
This is beautiful. Let's get to the heart of our conversation today, the why behind this entire Egypt project. I'd love for the three of you to paint a picture for us and for me and for the listeners of the situation that you were flying into. And Brian, if I can start with you, can you give us this 30,000 foot view of what was going on? What in Egypt? Why were you flying to go to Egypt?
Well, the MBA reached out to us, as Sush and Alan alluded to, and they were enlisted by USAID to bring some mortgage professionals to Egypt to talk about secondary markets and capital markets, because they did not have one. And so what we were doing is bringing our knowledge and expertise on the capital markets here in the United States to Egypt. And of course, this is 2005, and that was the go-go years for mortgage in the U.S., which I don't have to tell you, it changed pretty quickly in 2007 and 2008. But it was really to help them understand how the capital markets work. And so how do capital markets put money to work for investors as well as for the benefit of consumers and potential homeowners?
And to step back even a little further, in 2005, they had passed a law allowing mortgages in Egypt for the first time. So this was not something they had any experience with. And the reason they passed the law was they were trying to build a middle class. And they looked around the world to see who had succeeded in that. And every one of them had a vibrant housing market and a way to finance those homes. So that was what the impetus was. And they had no idea what to do and how to use the money, to Brian's point, and how to raise the money and what money to use. And so that was the impetus on the project.
Can you elaborate a little bit more about that? If you were an Egyptian citizen at that time, what was your journey to become a potential home buyer? Was it difficult for people? Was access to finance available to everyone like it is in the US?
No, there wasn't. There was an interesting way they financed. Either you had the money to buy a house or you didn't. And oftentimes people would delay their marriages. They would become engaged and would delay their marriages until they had enough money to buy the home, which sometimes was years. But the developers found an interesting way to finance their development. So most of their homes are vertical, they're flats and large buildings. And the developers would allow you to pay over time, but they wouldn't start building the project until they had all their money. So you would pay for years, the developer would get the money, and then they would start building the project. So it was a years-long process for those who didn't have family money that allowed them to buy the home.
And also to Alan's point, there was a lot of owner financing. There were not the banks so much. There was more prevalent to do the owner financing, and the owner would record it. And once in a while, the bank could make the loans, but typically the borrower had to give them all the checks and post-date the checks so that then the bank only had to just go in their drawer and pull those checks out. And very frequently they saw at the end of the term, the seller would say, I want more money. I'm not going to sell it to you for that original price. I want more money. So that was one of the things that they were also looking to do, make it standardized so that they could securitize it and that it was, to Alan's point, accessible to different castes and classes.
Let me see if I understand that correctly, that the problem that you guys were trying to solve was, on one hand, there was no capital markets, active capital markets, modern, like functioning, scalable, like it is in the US. And then on the other hand, you didn't have people with the skills to build that market. Is that correct?
Correct.
And no delivery system.
And no delivery system. Yeah.
Yep. So they didn't have the markets to produce the money for the loans. They didn't have a system to deliver the loans to their consumers. And so all they had was a law that said, yes, you can do it, and really no idea where to go from there.
Yeah. Yeah. That's fascinating. So that's the problem. And you fly to Cairo and paint the picture that, okay, the three of you accepted the mission to go to Cairo and you landed. Can you talk a little bit about those critical first days, really? I mean, you were, how long were you there for the first time?
First trip was 2 weeks, and I had not done a lot of international travel. I'd been to Europe once, very curated, places in Europe. So this was a culturally and physically very different than anything I'd ever done. So landing at the Cairo airport was definitely a cultural experience. I don't know what you guys thought about it.
What's your vivid memory, SuSheila, Brian, from that first encounter with Egypt, with Cairo?
Well, I'll just say that the MBA did a lot of work in setting up the framework and all of that. They did a lot of the logistics and things like that, and they cautioned us what to be prepared for and all of that. And as Alan said, it was completely different. But the one thing that we found was that the people that we were going to be in class with, teaching with, side by side, all of that, they could not have been nicer. They could not have been more welcoming. And right out of the gate, when we experienced that, it made the rest of the trip so much more relaxing and more comfortable.
Right. SuSheila, what is your vivid memory?
So I had been there before when my dad and mom were there, and when my brother was there. My husband and I had gone a couple of times and gone diving down in Sharm, and we're in Heliopolis and in Cairo. And it was interesting because when we were first going, Bob Anderman said, well, Susha's been there. She knows the language. She can speak it. We're going to have her do the introduction and say hello. And right before we got there, they said, absolutely not. Absolutely not. No woman can do this. It's got to be a man. So we had to flip it to be either Alan or Brian do it. So having been there, I took some food. I took peanut butter and jelly. I took flour tortillas, and I took tuna because I was very concerned about eating the food and getting sick. I couldn't be sick and teach at the same time. So I had done a lot of preparation, and where we stayed was a beautiful hotel on Zamalek. And so that was fabulous. And it was our home away from home for 2 weeks. And again, to their point, everybody was lovely and couldn't have been nicer.
So, and there's a picture of those of you who may remember Bob Anderman, who ran the schools of mortgage banking for MBA for years. And Sherry was staff at MBA. And Brian was just a little younger then. SuSheila was the same age.
No, SuSheila had brown hair then.
This is a beautiful picture. Picture tells so much more even than words often. So thanks for sharing that. I hope you brought more pictures to share more.
I do. I've got some more. It was to Brian's point, they were very prepared, and we found out perhaps maybe over prepared when we actually started the classes on Monday. One of my favorite stories, and I'll bring up a picture here in a minute, but Bob was a former school principal. So he was very regimented. He had a stopwatch, and everything was going to start on time and end on time, and not so much. They weren't there on time. When we went to lunch the first day, we sent them off at 12 o'clock, and they were to be back in their seats at 1 o'clock. And by 1:15, no one was in their seat, and we went on the hunt for them. And they still hadn't had their entree. They were all having their communal lunch. And I've got a picture of that I'm going to share with you here. Anyway, we found out that no, scheduling and being on time was not part of their culture. But relationships were. So this was the most important time of the day where they sat around a table.
Val, one time when we were teaching to get them to get there on time, as soon as the class was supposed to start, whether it was 9 a.m. or 1 p.m. after lunch, we would give them the answers to the quizzes that we were giving that afternoon. And so if they weren't there, they didn't get the answers to the quizzes. And so we really did very well when we went back a number of times to get them to get there in time. But there they all are, 20 minutes into our class.
It looks like a very good meal.
Yes.
Yeah, oh yeah. Well,
Is
that was their big meal of the day, so
right.
they wouldn't eat dinner till 10 o'clock at night or so.
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. And how big is that the whole class? How big was your class?
It was about a dozen people.
How many classes did you teach? How many people went through your training?
So the first week we had that class, and then SuSheila, you can tell them about the second week.
So then the second week, we trained with them. So we trained the trainer, and then they brought in another group of people that the trainers were training. And so we co-taught with them. Basically, they led it, but then we were there to help them with anything that they needed. Alan, can I tell her real quickly the story about the translator?
Oh, yeah.
There was a translator, and she had to be able to speak Arabic and English, right? So if the instructors were training, she would translate into English for us so we could make sure they stayed on track. And if we added something, she had to translate so that the students could understand what we were saying. So there were a couple of times we got pretty excited about information, and they were like sponges. They were very quick to catch on. And so we would get really excited and we talk really fast, and she'd bang on the window to slow down. And we tried to slow down. And at one point, somebody asked a question and I was so excited to answer it. I started walking and the headphones were connected. And so it yanked me backwards because I went further than the headphones would let us go. But that was pretty exciting.
That was that second week where we had you could see the one guy has the headphones on there with the translation. Well, the first week they had all the people spoke very good English.
That was one of the requirements for them to come to the class, would be part of it, just to be reasonably fluent in English.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, one of the things I was very impressed with, particularly with the first group, they had worked a lot for American Express, B of A, some of the American institutions that were over there. So they were really familiar with a lot of our practices, our language, and how we did business in the U.S. So that was a big help.
Yeah. So it seems like you really developed relationships with your students, with the people there, with your colleagues, and it doesn't look like a 9-to-5 kind of job. It was a life experience in a way. Would you say that's true?
Absolutely. That was really the biggest thing we took away very early. And luckily we had SuSheila, who has never met a stranger. She was making relationships with the hotel staff. She was making relationships. And we found out that was the key to our success, was building relationships, because most of the folks coming over on these, expats coming over, they weren't building relationships. They were collecting their paycheck and going and seeing the pyramids and getting out. And we actually, here, I'll share some photos of some of the families who invited us into their homes. And this was our driver, believe it or not.
Oh, very nice.
And then there were a couple of the ladies who ended up running the largest mortgage companies in Egypt, who invited us to their home for dinner, and they were missing from work for 2 days. And we were like, where are they? And they said, oh, they're starting to prepare the meal for you for Friday.
That's very, very sweet. Yeah. Yeah. So on the work front, did you at any point in time have a big problem, or like you felt like you hit a wall of some sort, that it was difficult for you guys while you were there?
Brian,
Sorry, the only two things that I would say was getting them back in class, either getting them to start on time at 9 or after lunch. The other thing is, if you guys remember, during Ramadan, we were there during Ramadan, and we probably shouldn't have been. They had hired us to come, so we had to go. But number one, they weren't allowed to eat. They don't eat when the sun is up. They have to wait till sunset. So sometimes we would leave the room very quietly and eat a little bit during the day. But also they were exhausted. They didn't start until the sun went down. Of course, it was summer, so the sun didn't set till 10. And then they would be up till 3 or 4 in the morning. Some of them were falling asleep in the class. That was probably, to me, the most challenging.
Yeah. I mean, that was an ambitious project, and it had to be done when it had to be done. How long did it last, your involvement with this project?
Altogether, 5 years?
Yeah, 5 years.
Yeah.
In 2010, the three of us spoke at a Euromoney conference, which was televised in Cairo. There was a lot of people there, a lot of translators, but a great opportunity for us to kind of showcase, the work that we've done over the last 5 years.
Hey, Alan, can you show that picture again?
Yes.
Can we just
Yeah.
have that?
Oh, the one with the girls?
Yeah. So number one, they were so loving and so kind. And a lot of time the boys we had one day off a week. They would go do something together. And I would go with the girls. We'd get our hair done, get our nails done, go have lunch. But I just wanted to show you who some of the women were that we were working with.
It's coming. There we go.
So the one in the white is across from me. That was Amal, and she ran one of the mortgage company of a large bank.
Mhm.
Paula in the red also ran the financial institution, and she got several promotions while we were there because of what we were doing. And then Wafa next to me was at the MFA. She was on the regulator side,
Mhm.
and the so they were all three of them very high up and very instrumental in success of the project and the success of us.
So the two ladies on the left, Amal and Hala, ended up leading the two largest mortgage operations in the entire country. And one of
That's
the interesting
impressive.
things is there were no men in the industry to get in their way.
Right.
So it was the people who worked the hardest and understood it the best who succeeded, and it was these two ladies that succeeded the most, and that was gratifying. They were both in our first class the first week.
Val, I don't know if this is a good time to say it, but I'll put it in here and you can move
Yeah.
it if you want to. Who's the one in the white? Hala and
Wafa.
Amal. Sorry.
Amal. Yeah.
When we went back, we were there the day that the agencies crashed and the day that they got put into conservatorship. And 2 days before that, she was so excited about showing me her new property that she was buying in the new city, they called it, which was way out of town. And they were gorgeous. And I kept telling her, please don't buy it. Please don't buy it. The market's not good. Something's going to happen. Keep your little flat that you have in Heliopolis. And she was like, no, I really think I'm going to buy it. Thank God. 2 days later, not thank God, but the market crashed. And so she didn't end up buying it. And the poor new city, I'll do some research and send it to you, but I don't think it ever got off the ground.
Yeah. Wow, that's what a story, SuSheila. Yeah.
Yeah.
Those were interesting times. Thanks for sharing that. And we are looking at a new picture. And Alan, I see you and Brian and
SuSheila's on the left there, and Hala and
yes,
Amal are in between us. And so this was the Euromoney conference,
okay,
where we spoke, and Brian was the star of that show, talking about his famous word coopetition.
Yes, it was very interesting, Val. My topic was coopetition, and it really was about sending a message to the industry. Excuse me. Here in the United States, you have U.S. Bank and you have Chase and Wells Fargo, and they're all acting together to create an industry that can provide consumers with home ownership. But at the same time, Wells Fargo, U.S. Bank, Chase, all the others, we also compete.
Mm-hmm.
But we compete for the good of the consumer. And so that was an interesting thing to try to get that message across to a large group of folks.
Yeah, you were bringing some of the lessons learned and best practices from the US to a different economy. And sometimes, there are different laws and different structures. And as you were saying, different ways of people even organizing the competition. Did that kind of difference change how you were talking to people or how you were delivering the lessons, for example, on mortgage, which is conventional mortgage has interest, it has principal, it has a repayment schedule. Did that resonate with your audience?
I think it did resonate with the audience. With that said, it may have been a rock too big to push up the hill. And a simple example, Val, is that you've got, two banks on either side of the street corner, and they all used different mortgage documents. They all had different terms. They all had different everything. And for them to understand that you can't securitize loans with those two companies with all different documentation, all different rules and guidelines and things like that. And that was kind of the anchor for us. That's what worked in the United States is we all use the same, Fannie Freddie documents. We all have the same underwriting standards. They did not. And for them to have a successful secondary market, that was the first step that they needed to do.
And Val, one interesting thing is they couldn't charge interest because under Sharia law, you can't charge interest. So they had to create a workaround where instead of you coming to me to buy my house and then going to the lender to borrow the money to pay for it, as the seller, I would sell the house to the lender for $100,000, and the lender would sell it to you for $200,000. And then you would pay it back over time. Well, it worked out exactly the same as you paying principal and interest, but that way they were able to call it profit rather than interest.
Yeah.
And so I sold it for $100,000 to the bank sold it to you for $200,000. They would have made $100,000 in interest over the 20 years they were charging.
Yeah.
But instead, they got to charge it as profit and then make it back in payments over those 20 years. So that was the trick that they used to make it fit under Sharia law.
Right. I was wondering about that, and that seems like some of the concepts that you have been you were teaching were based on the U.S. law, which is very scalable based on that, concept of interest. Did you have to change some of the content of those courses to adapt to the industry, or were you truly trying to teach best practices, how things are done for scalable, stable housing finance system?
But it was definitely something we learned soon into the first class, is that we had to make some adjustments. And so we became PowerPoint experts on that trip, I think, because we had to shift a lot of the slides to be a little more culturally sensitive and be to fit what they were trying to do, that they couldn't do the same as us. And culturally, we'll let Brian tell you his cultural aha moment.
Yeah.
When we were teaching with your explanation of the lose your shirt.
Yes. Interestingly enough, when early on when I was teaching, we have a lot of idioms and colloquialisms here in the U.S. as we do globally. But I was talking about trading and selling loans on the secondary market, and I said, if you don't do this right or do that right, you're going to lose your shirt. And you could hear the air just get sucked out of the room. Like, what?
What? He's not gonna have a shirt
I had to
on?
quickly backpedal and say, "This is what I mean. You're not physically going to lose your shirt." So we learned to be very mindful of the colloquialisms that we.
Wow, that's a funny story. Yeah. How about do you have stories like that, SuSheila?
Well, I was just going to say, it's interesting that you brought up the best practices, because we did have to use that phrase a lot when we were teaching there, that this is best practices. You're going to have to figure out what you're going to do in this country to address that. But this is, if you look at best practices internationally, this is what you need to do. And we very successfully helped them create the first securitization while we were there. They were able to get it everything the same enough that they were able to securitize it. So that was really exciting to be a part of that.
Oh, that's amazing. Thanks, SuSheila. This is really a foundational piece that you put in place. That first time you do something big like that was super important. So you were holding their hand and encouraging them, being right there. Yeah. So,
and I'm going to share a picture here of.
Yes.
This is, I think, our third trip where we were again helping folks who had been in our initial class, and they had taken it and made it their own and teaching it all over the country. But there's Ahmed, who I just spoke with about a week ago. It was he's retired from the industry and going into consulting.
Oh.
But his family and my family went to dinner. My family came over one time, and we just really connected. And he has been passionate about this business for the last 20 years. and trying to make it, both on the government side and the private side, trying to make it work over there. And it's well, we can talk about how it kind of ended here in a moment, but he's been one of its biggest advocates since the beginning.
Yeah, thanks, Alan. This is another great picture. Thank you for bringing those pictures. So Brian and SuSheila and Alan, all of you, now looking back from today's point of view back into the past and just looking at the whole development of Egypt, of their housing finance system, where would you say was your biggest legacy or your lasting legacy that you have left on that economy, on that development? Do you think the work you did in 2005 to 2010 was able to change how Egypt homeowners are achieving homeownership?
Right.
Well, I would say, I mean, I'll just say shortly after we left, Mubarak, who was the leader of the country, resigned or was pushed out or whatever.
And I think he ended up in jail.
And he did end up in jail as well. But the Arab Spring came in, and I can't remember the guy's name. Morsi, yeah. So he came in, and so that's the Muslim Brotherhood. And so I feel like a lot of what we did was kind of put on hold until the political regime turned over.
And one of the ironic things is, because women had taken over the industry, Morsi's government wasn't friendly to it. It wasn't something that they thought was proper, was to have women run the industry. And so unfortunately, a lot of the good work we did ended up on a shelf in a government agency that doesn't exist anymore, for the very low income to own homes. And so their whole goal of building that middle class through homeownership really was derailed. And I hope and pray someday they'll dust that off, and I would love to be part of it if they ever do it again, because I think they've got a tremendous opportunity.
Val, our director, Manal, who was Egyptian, and she was there when we were there, and she was basically the person that we reported to. She was showing us, we were out one night, and there were all these placards up on street signs, street lights, that had like information. And it was basically, we're bringing mortgage to you. You can get a loan. Call us. We'll give you information. Well, guess what? Most of the people they were marketing to can't read. So it sort of made them feel better. Oh, there she is. That's her family.
Yeah.
Yeah. So here they tried to do something, but they didn't think it all the way through because they didn't know how to read.
That's fascinating. That's truly fascinating. What a difference and how many obstacles in the development of a functioning housing finance system. And I know that even in the US, it took a while. We all know the history. 1800s, 1900s, we had balloon payments, short-term loans, and we had to wait until middle of 20th century to have this vibrant market. I really hope, as Alan, you were saying, that something will turn around. They will dust off those training, those concepts and ideas, and will run again with them because of the opportunity that mortgage finance allows people to build wealth, to buy homes and things like that.
I was just going to say the security for the children. When you look at kids grow up in homes that are owned, rather than moving every year or getting thrown out because they can't afford the rent, to your point, it just builds such a good home structure for the little ones as well.
Yeah. Well, I want to switch gears a little bit because we talked about your work and the impact on Egypt, but also usually especially when you work in a different cultural environment, that environment impacts you. So I'd love to talk about how it changed each of you. So Brian, let's start with you. How did this experience in Egypt, working with the MBA and your Egyptian counterpart, how this changed you personally or professionally?
Well, it's a great question, Val. And I'll say early on, we quickly realized the zest for learning that these people had, and they desperately wanted to learn more because they could see, it's an opportunity for them to grow. And, that just, I'm deep down, I'm a teacher, and it's just fantastic to see them embrace it and then them also want to teach, right? And share the knowledge and share the wealth and all that. So that was a lasting impression for me.
Thanks for that, Brian. SuSheila, how about you? How did this journey change you?
So I think a couple of things. As Alan mentioned, I have never known a stranger. And it was funny. One day we were in the class and somebody was talking about this fantastic housekeeper that they had and they really enjoyed her, but she needed more work. And we're talking to somebody else and they said, I really need a housekeeper. And I said, I got the housekeeper for you. So I put these two together. And I think we did a lot of that while we were there. And we spent a lot of our free time with them, to the point that when they've come to the U.S., we're the first ones that they reach out to when they come and see us. We make a point to get to Philly or get to Florida, wherever they're visiting. We make a point to go see them as well. But the other thing, Val, I found on a personal level was, while the CMB, it really surprises me. Brian and Stephen Valadares were the ones that sponsored me and made me do it. And I was, hey, I've got my degree. I already know everything. I don't need to be a CMB. And they said, yes, you do. And the day I got my CMB, it was like this curtain open and there were all these wonderful people saying, how can I help you? Tell me what you need. And it truly changed my career. And I get amazed at people that say, you have a CMB? That's amazing. I never could get my CMB. And I'm thinking, if I could do it, you could do it. But the same thing when we came back from Egypt, people were like, you were in Egypt, you trained over there. How did you find it? And it really gave us a lot of credibility in this market to be able to help people and train people and open their eyes to see what else was out there.
And Alan, how did it shape your perspective on your career, on the industry?
So I still treat it as the highlight of my career to have the opportunity to do this. First of all, with these great people. I'm gonna run three quick things by you. Number one, the end of that first week when we had one of our new trainers ready to go, he thought, you guys did a great job. We've got all the material. We understand it because of you guys. But one thing we're not going to be able to achieve is just the cohesiveness you guys have. Obviously, you guys have been teaching together for years, and we've only met this week. And we looked at each other like, no, we met on the plane over here. And they were shocked that we hadn't been working together for years because we work together so well. And if you know us, we are three very different people, and we became best friends. So number one, my best friends came out of it. Number two, to find out culturally that we treat relationships as important in the US, but we fake it. If you go to any sales training, they say relationship selling is the way to do it. Build a relationship. When what they really mean is fake a relationship long enough to get your sale. And in Egypt, it really is about the relationships. And so I'll move to the third part before I come back to the middle one again. The reason they chose MBA is they wanted the credibility of the organization. The reason they chose CMBs is because they wanted the credibility of the designation. So that's why we went over, is they wanted that credibility and we had it. But the reason we were able to make it 5 years rather than just a 2-week contract was because of the relationships we built with the people there. And so that's the thing I take away from it, and really I'm a relationship person, and that's what meant the most to me.
Wow, that's such a powerful story and thoughts. I want to return to something that SuSheila said just a moment ago about the CMB. And I think that this entire experience, and you expressed it, Alan, the credibility of the designation. Your story is also a powerful testament to the value of a certified mortgage banker designation, which signifies not only skills, it signifies ethics. We know it's the highest achievement in our industry. So my probably, I would say, biggest question, most passionate question here is, what does your experience in Egypt, how you tested yourself, what does it tell you about the skills of a certified mortgage banker? Based on everything you went through, why do you believe that a CMB can be such an effective consultant, not only in the US, but also beyond, anywhere in the world?
Well, I'll start by saying, to be a CMB, you need to know a little bit about everything. You may not know everything about everything, but you know a little bit about everything, and you know how to connect dots. you know what the end goal is. The end goal, if you are in this business and don't realize that the end goal is to change the lives of the consumer who owns a home, then the rest of it doesn't matter. But when you start with that premise and you can understand how all the really complicated pieces go together, you have to have that to be a CMB, and you have to have that to be a critical thinking consultant.
Critical thinking consultant. I love that. SuSheila, Brian, would you like to add?
Well, I think the relationship building is a big part, because even on our projects that we work on, and Brian and I have worked on several, as have Alan and I, and it's always the relationship that we bring to the clients, and we get a lot of repeat business because of that, because they do trust us and they do know that we're knowledgeable and we're ethical and we know things. And to Alan's point, there's several times I've been on the phone with someone and they talk about something and I'm like, and I'm Googling it real quickly and I can find some information so I can speak at least intelligently enough on the first call and then get back with them later and say, well, here's what we should look at and here's what we should do. But I think the relationship building and the ability to find the knowledge if we don't have it. And the same thing as when I said, when I got the CMB and it was like a curtain open and all those people are there, you all have seen it, where somebody will put on the CMB Society webpage, hey, can you help me? I need to find a consultant. I had 7 people reach out to me about the most recent one saying, hey, you need to talk to this person. And it's the same thing. If I have a question about something that I don't know, I know who to call to get the answer.
Brian?
I would I echo, of course, what these guys are saying, but just to add to SuSheila, it's about relationship, but it's also networking. Mm-hmm. Right. So if we don't know the answer, if that's not our sweet spot, we know exactly who we can call, but we also know that person we can call has the same integrity level and knowledge level that we do, just in a different part of the industry.
That's a very good point.
Well, one last question for all of you. If a similar amazing opportunity came up again tomorrow in another country, would you do it?
Yeah.
You answered before I would finish. Yes. Yeah. Wonderful.
Especially with these two. And that was one of the best things, was traveling with them. The one time I did travel alone, Alan had left right before me and Brian had left. And so I was there by myself and my purse got stolen. And where were we? Turkey. They had asked us to come in and give a presentation and look at it. And so my purse got stolen. I was stuck there for 48 hours. If I didn't get out, Ramadan started, I had to stay for 2 weeks. It was very, very, very painful. So I would go anywhere in the world with those two, but I would have to travel.
Beautiful.
We got that recorded too, Alan.
Yeah, we do.
Well, we have it in recording and in transcript afterwards. Well, thank you so much for joining me today for the CMB Connect. This was the first episode of the second season of CMB Connect with you 3.
Well, congratulations.
Yes, thank you. And I will see you in the CMB Society next time.
That sounds good. Val, right. Thanks so much for doing this. We really appreciate
the opportunity, Val.
Very much. Thanks, Val.
It's my pleasure. Thank you again.